Zeros to tens, pick up your pens, class in session. This is some life lessons, cause strife less ends when you heal. Hi, it's Lotus Uba. Welcome to Healing with Yoga and Creativity. Today's video will be all about yoga. It'll be about the fundamental parts of reading this book by TKV Desikachar. Sorry if I'm pronouncing it wrong. The book is titled The Heart of Yoga, Developing a Personal Practice. And in my opinion, I feel like this is a good book, like a good foundation book. It's very digestible, and it's breaking down into 3 parts of what yoga actually is. Part 1, it's all about the practice of yoga. It kind of sets the stage of it. And then part 2, it dives deeper into it. And so I feel like part 2 is a lot of woo, but it's good woo that expanded my eyes on what actually yoga is. And then part 3 is about the Yoga Sutras, which is interesting in itself. And so we're gonna start at part 1, but I just wanna say that this book truly expanded my view on what yoga truly is. For example, did you know yoga is just not that what we see on Instagram of like skinny white girls going inhale and now breathe, like, you know, like it's not like that. That's part of it, but that is just the gentrified capitalistic Western framework of what yoga is. Like, did you know that yoga is actually an 8-limb system where the physical part, the asanas, are one part of it? There's like an 8-step, and I can't wait to actually go into that. I won't spoil it in our intro video, but when I was reading this book, it really changed that false perception of what we see of yoga in present day social media. And it literally gets to the heart of what yoga truly is. And so with that being said, we're going to start off on chapter 1. Chapter 1 is all about yoga's concept and meaning. And I like how it starts because it kind of gives you what yoga is. And so I'll read from the very first sentence. To begin, I should like to share some thoughts that might help us understand the many different meanings of the word yoga. And also, sorry, obviously I am Somali. I only speak English. I can't even speak my own mother tongue because that is some trauma. But yeah, these words, I'm gonna try my best to pronounce Sanskrit. FYI, if I'm butchering it, I do apologize. So let's rewind. To begin, I should like to share some thoughts that might help us understand the many different meanings of the word yoga. Yoga is one of the 6 fundamental systems of Indian thought collectively known as darshana. And the other 5 darshanas are, Nyaya, that means justice. Vaishashaka, which is philosophy. Sankhya, which is about dualism. Mimasa, which is reflection. And lastly, Vedanta, which translates to end of knowledge. The word darshana is derived from the Sanskrit root darsh, which translates as to see. Darshana therefore means sight, view, point of view, or even a certain way of seeing. And right off that bat, just the first opening sentence, it kind of paints you just how deep Hinduism is, I guess, like that school of thought. Like we have yoga, but there's also schools of thoughts surrounding justice, philosophy, dualism, which is really interesting because we are all connected, we are all one. And then there's reflection, and then there's the end of knowledge. So the fact that the author is letting us know that yoga is a part of this kind of helps us understand it even more. goes on this, but beyond these lie another meaning. To understand this one, we must conjure an image of a mirror with which we can look inside ourselves. And in fact, all the great texts introduce us to ways of seeing that creates opportunity for us to recognize ourselves better. We look deeper inside ourselves as we come to terms with the teaching. And the fact that this sentence follows the previous one about the schools of thought, what really resonated with me is that the more that we look inside of ourselves, the more we can understand these schools of thought and these teachings. And I really like how he's conjuring out the image that to understand what yoga really is, we must look at ourselves even better. And I just thought that was such a wonderful insight, especially early on with what truly yoga is. That's the concept of this, doing that inner work. And so with that being said, the book lays out several different interpretation of meanings of what yoga is. I believe there is 5 within this first chapter of 5 different meanings. And now that we've known, going back to that previous concept of yoga being a mirror for you, we can understand that yoga would mean several different things to several different people, because as he said, we are like individuals and our interpretation of what yoga really is could change. But I really like that the author sets out 5 definitions. Many different interpretations of the word yoga has been handed down over the centuries. One of these is to come together, to unite. Another meaning of the word of yoga is to tie the strands of the mind together. A further meaning of the word yoga is to attain what was previously unattainable. Another aspect of yoga has to do with our actions. Therefore, yoga also means acting in such a way that all of our attention is directed towards the activity in which we are currently engaged in. Yoga attempts to create a state in which we are always present, really present, in every action and every moment. And another classical definition of yoga is to be one with the divine. It does not matter what name we use for the divine, God, Allah, Ishvara, or whatever. Anything that brings us closer to understanding that there is a higher power and greater than ourselves is yoga. When we feel in harmony with that higher power, that too is yoga. So you can see that there are many possible ways of understanding the meaning of the word yoga. And so right off the bat, when I was reading this, I just kept thinking to myself, what does yoga mean? And I can see each of those 5 definitions applicable in my experience, for example. So the first definition was, one definition is to come together, to unite. And so when I think about that one really resonates with me, because my yoga journey started, as you know, to do inner child healing work for CPTSD. And so I can see that, what am I coming together with? What am I uniting with? I'm uniting with that inner child, with that body that has been dissociated from trauma for so long. So I can see how that definition is applicable in my experience. And then when I look at the second definition, another is to tie the strands of the minds together. So when I was reading that, even now, I think about what is the strands of the mind. So strands are how your mind is wired. And anyone that has CPTSD, our strands are completely fucked up. We are wired completely different. We are super woman and man. But that is what is, at least that's what I'm understanding, that it's trying to tie the strands of the minds together. So quieting those wired traumas around. And so when I saw that, I was like, okay, I could see that applicable in my life. And then number 3, I really like number 3, which is like to attain what was previously unattainable. And when we think about the physical part of yoga, for example, like one day you can do, one day you can't do the split. That is something that's unattainable presently. But the more you practice with yoga, down the line, what was previously unattainable is now attainable. And so I really like that definition in terms of the actual physical part, you know? I've been noticing that I can actually do the splits now, where in the past I couldn't, you know? And yeah, so I really like that definition. And then number 4, yoga can also mean acting in a way that all of our attention is directed towards the activity in which we are engaged in. And so when I'm thinking about when I'm actually doing the physical yoga part, there's a lot of mind and body connection, that the breath is key to it. And I can see where in that specific activity, where, for example, if I have to do a balanced pose, my mind is completely focused, my attention is completely directed towards keeping that balance. And as a result, I always notice that my mind is so quiet, like there's nothing distracting me. And as a result, I'm able to keep my balance. But what this definition goes beyond is by creating a state in which we are always present in every action, in every moment. So for me, I'm reading that it's attempting to get that benefit that I experience on the mat when I'm doing a balance pose, and putting it outside of it. Like, you know, like any time that I am outside of the mat, yoga is attempting to create that same presence that I feel when I'm on one leg. So I really resonated with that one as well. And then number five, I feel like number 5 is what a lot of Muslim and Christian and religious folks have an issue with. As you know, I carry religious trauma, and I've always used to hear yoga is haram, and I couldn't really understand their viewpoints, because really just doing stretching. But it's because of that definition that people, especially Abrahamic folks, get really weirded about, and I actually like it. Another definition, so number 5 is another definition, is to be one with the divine. It does not matter what that name we use. And so I know a lot of Muslims feel that that's impossible, that is haram, that you cannot be one with Allah. But these same Muslims would go outside of themselves and pray in a religiously or ritualistically, like, you know, their prayer, the rituals every single day, yet they are going outside of them because that book is outside of them. That book is telling them you have to pray 5 times a day to feel Allah's presence. So yoga is essentially different in the sense that you are going inside yourself. You're attempting to be one with God, source, Allah, whoever it may be. And so I really like that. I think it's such a beautiful concept, because I am a firm believer that the divine is within me, not outside of me, not outside in some book that I don't understand, not written by some men and males thousands and thousands of years ago, claiming one died and rose up for our sins. No, the divine is within. It has always been within us, and yoga attempts to create that state where we can experience it. And I just felt that was just so beautiful. And so it goes on to say the practice of yoga only requires us to act, to be attentive to our actions. Each of us is required to pay careful attention to the direction we are taking, so that we know where we are going. Where and how does the practice of yoga begin? Should we always begin on the physical level? No. We begin where we are and how we are. And whatever happens, happens. And I found that so beautiful, because it's essentially saying we just have to be very present with our action. Yoga, the only thing yoga acquires us requires us to do, is just to be present and act. And I find that so beautiful for folks who carry CPTSD. It's really hard for us to be present, especially when all that wiring and strands of the past keeps seeping through and shattering our reality. And so yoga, I feel like, is a gift for us folks who have to do the work to heal. And I really like it where we begin, where we are, and how we are. And whatever happens, happens. And so I found that really beautiful because it kind of got me thinking, how did I get started in yoga? So for me, my journey to yoga started almost 2 years ago. Yeah, like exactly 2 years ago. Oh wow, it's been 2 years since I've been doing consistent morning yoga. See, something happens. Whatever happens is happening. But so how I started into yoga is I've actually, the very first time I've ever done yoga was, I would say, in 2017, almost 10 years ago. And I still remember my first class. 1 hour, I could not last. It kicked my ass. Downward dog sucked and everything. But it was always on and off. And then the pandemic happened and it was completely off. And for 2 years ago, I was working out. I wanted to go to a Black Coffee concert. I had tickets and everything, and unfortunately I pulled my back the day before the concert. And up to that point, I've only ever experienced three low back pain issues, and that was the third time. And in the past, those 2 other incidents kept me completely bedridden, debilitated, you know? And so I was really upset that I'm experiencing bad back pain, and I'm going to see Black Coffee the next day. And so in a desperate attempt, I went to the massage therapist. It didn't really help, but I Googled back pain relief and read it. And when I tell you, folks were all like, try yoga, try yoga. Long story short, I tried 20 minutes of yoga that same night, and when I tell you, I was able to get instant relief. Like, I still think about how much, like, it still shocks me that I was able to get immediate relief. But I went to the concert the next day. I didn't have to sell my ticket. I was actually able to enjoy myself and dance. My back pain was not as severe. Like, I did yoga for back pain religiously that day, and that's how I got started. And that's how I knew that there's something truth to this, that there is power. Because as I said, I've never experienced relief immediately with my back pain until I tried yoga. So that was how I got into it. And ever since then, I've been doing it consistently for every morning. So that is how I got started. And then in terms of, let's get into discussion questions. I kind of answered the first discussion questions, but reading this first chapter, a lot of things I was reflecting on. Like, I was reflecting on how and why I got started, and that is how and why I got started. I'm curious for you guys to reflect, like, what made you get into yoga? How did you get started? And whatever happens, happens. Another question is, what have you noticed since your journey? And for me, as I said, I started this consistent morning yoga practice for the last 2 years, like every single morning. I'm kind of proud of myself for that because I've never done that. But ever since then, I've noticed tremendous changes. I've noticed that obviously my body's getting better. As you age, especially when you hit your 30s, girlies, fitness. Yoga is key. It helps me age wonderfully. Like, I feel younger than I did before, which is really weird, but it's keeping my body flexible as I age. Another thing I did notice is my executive dysfunction is functioning much better. As one of the definition was to essentially tie the strands of the minds together. I'm seeing that with my own awareness, being able to heal that dysfunction side, because CPTSD, it really destroys your executive function, you know, like I have ADHD, you know, sometimes I have trouble starting because I'm a procrastinator, but yoga has been helping me tie those strands together, you know. And then, what does yoga mean to you? Can you see any of these definitions applicable in your life? And obviously for me, all five of those topics, they resonate completely. If I had to say which one is my favorite right now, it's probably number one, which means to come together, to unite. And that has been, at least for me, present moment of why I got started, is to come together and unite with that inner child that's inside of me. I used to do yoga before I even knew what yoga was. As a child, I used to be very, very active. I used to be doing a lot of back bends, cartwheels, bridges, you know, just a very active child, cartwheels, roundhouse, all of that. I'm pretty sure I thought it probably did the splits anyway, but that is just to show that my inner child really liked that. And yoga has a very, very playful side where you're able to do those same moves, you know, like for example, headstand. I used to love doing headstands as a child, and that is a yoga pose, like, you know, like a pose, a lot of inversion. So I recently did the full bridge, you know, and I felt like that inner child come out as soon as my chest expanded. So that is one definition I really resonate with and like. I really like the number 5 definition, to be one with the divine, only because it pisses off so many religious folks, but it is actually true. Like, I feel like that's why Christians and Muslims think yoga is haram, because of that one saying, how they view you can connect with the divine. And I really resonate with that. I truly believe that God is in God's source, creator, the creativity of the universe, whatever you want to call it, the power that's higher than you and I, is inside of us, not outside of us. And so I really resonated with number 5 too. I mean, all of them, but I really like that one. Is yoga a mirror for you and seeing inside yourself? So I want you guys to ponder that question. Is yoga a mirror for you and seeing inside yourself? In my experience, yes. Again, I read this whole book, so I don't want to like kind of jump ahead, but yoga is truly a mirror to look inside yourself, because it's all about the mind, body, and connection. And as you're moving along doing that, you're able to attune and look inside yourself. And so I do resonate with it. And this question, I want to answer fully, but I don't want to spoil parts down the line. But as I learn more and more about yoga, yoga is truly a mirror for us to look inside of ourselves, you know? Yes, well, that was chapter 1. It was a brief little intro. I hope you did enjoy the concept of yoga, like yoga, the concepts and meaning. And then in part 2, in chapter 2, we're going to dive into it even further with the foundations of what a yoga practice is. So stay tuned for chapter 2. It's going to be the next video as we look forward to it. I am Lotus Oba. We could drop our pens for now. Life lessons are done. The strife is lessening. We are getting better. We are healing. And I hope you enjoyed watching Healing with Yoga and Creativity. Lotus Opa out.